Hi again, it's Ken Iverson back in Kent, Washington, USA. I just recorded a segment on my mother, the KFC, the Mariners, Obama, and assisted living. And now I'm going on to talk about some of the things that my mother and I talked towards the end of our evening together tonight. As I left, the Mariners were still playing, and I couldn't take it anymore, so I left. And we talked about what Obama was going to say tomorrow night in his address from the Oval Office. That's on the 31st, on on August 31st, the day that he's committed to having all of our troops out of, not all of them, but having the combat forces leave Iraq. And he's lived up to that promise, and I say, good for you, President Obama. I wish you would do the same thing in Iraq and do it soon. And not in Iraq, in Afghanistan, excuse me. I think that both of those wars were misadventures. I think that George W. Bush seriously miscalculated when he went into Iraq. He didn't anticipate the resistance that he was going to get. He stood on the deck of the aircraft carrier Liberty with a sign over his head that said "Mission accomplished." Mission accomplished. And he expected the Iraqi people to welcome the Americans with open arms and make the world safe for democracy, as they talked about in World War II. Well, that didn't happen. That was almost 9 years ago. I don't know what President Bush was thinking. As long as we're talking about it, as long as we're talking about going into Iraq, let's discuss that for a moment. The avowed reasons that we went into Iraq, the Americans went into Iraq, invaded that country, were because they had weapons of mass destruction, one, and two, Saddam Hussein was directly connected to 9/11, right? Neither of which are true or were true. A good man, Colin Powell, went before the United Nations. I watched it. He went before the United Nations and he made the case for us invading Iraq. And he said in an interview a number of years later to Barbara with Barbara Walters that he would go to his grave and he would be remembered for that misstatement. He didn't do it. That wasn't his misstatement. It was faulty intelligence or it was duplicity on the part of somebody. But Colin Powell is a good, honorable man, and his reputation is forever besmirched by what he said in good faith before the United Nations before we invaded Iraq. And I say Colin Powell is a victim just as much as the Iraqi people are a victim of the policies of a failed administration, the Bush administration. Uh, Anyway, the two reasons that we went in were weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein was directly connected to 9/11, neither of which was true. And I have heard, and a lot of people believe, that what was going on in the mind of George W. Bush was that he was going to avenge Saddam Hussein, saying that Saddam Hussein was going to kill George W. Bush's father, George W. H. Bush. I think I got that right. Herbert Walker, or H.W. Bush, I guess. George H.W. Bush, the first President Bush, the elder. And some people think that the George W. Bush went in there to avenge his father. And I don't know whether that's true or not. I'd like to think that George W. Bush is a bigger man than that or has more sense than that he didn't risk all of those American lives for something as petty as that. But he may have. I don't know. And no one probably will ever know. If he did, he's probably ashamed of himself and wouldn't put it even in his memoirs. So we'll see. Another reason I've heard that we went into Iraq was because of the oil. The oil, we're dependent in this country on foreign oil, and a lot of it comes from Iraq and comes from the Middle East. And there are some people who think that that's the reason we're in Afghanistan, is we want to protect the oil resources that are there, also the mineral resources. They've been discovered, lithium and stuff like that in Afghanistan just in recent years. The Russians, the Soviets before that, the Russians have been pumping oil for 30 years in Afghanistan, and natural gas. It's a wealth of oil and natural gas in Afghanistan. So anyway, whatever our reasons for going into Iraq, it wasn't for what George W. Bush's administration said, the weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein was directly connected to 9/11. That just wasn't true. And towards the end of his administration, George W. Bush was interviewed by the press, the White House press corps, I believe. I believe Jake Tapper was one of them, and whatever. And he was asked about weapons of mass destruction and Saddam Hussein and all of that, particularly about weapons of mass destruction. And he talked about it, and he gave something that I noticed, and some of the reporters picked up on. He gave a nervous little laugh when he talked about there weren't any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And that's the kind of nervous little laugh that a 5-year-old will make when he's been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. I didn't do it, Mom, really. And that was my thought when I saw George W. Bush in that nervous little twitter of his, that nervous little laugh. It's a shame that over 5,000 people, 5,000 men and women, have been killed in Iraq and Afghanistan because of a miscalculation, at least a miscalculation. There are other words for it, but I won't use them. We invaded a sovereign country. We went in there and by proxy executed their president. The trains ran on time when Saddam Hussein was president. You may not like Saddam Hussein. He may have done a lot of things wrong to the Kurds and to other people in the war with Iran. You may not like him, but the trains did run on time. There was order, and there was security for the Iraqi people. Now there is not. Almost daily or weekly, in Baghdad or some of the other cities in Iraq, there are suicide bombers blowing themselves up and killing 50, 75, 100 people at a time. And that's after we got in there. I'm a loyal American. I live and die. I live and die for the red, white, and blue. When I founded Peace Day, the organization and the event, I'm the president and CEO of Peace Day. I wanted to have Peace Day. I wanted to celebrate it on June 14th, which is Flag Day. I got the idea for Peace Day from Andy Rooney on A Few Minutes with Andy Rooney on 60 Minutes on November 8th of 2009. I wrote a letter to President Obama the next day, and I suggested that we celebrate a new day called Peace Day, and we celebrate it on Flag Day, and the connection between peace and the flag would be worthy of a great nation. Obama wrote back on a letter dated, I believe it was January 4th of 2010, saying, thank you for the idea, and we need suggestions like yours for this country is in a new era now, and we need suggestions like yours. And I accepted that. Like I said before, it was a form letter, but at least he acknowledged my letter. And I wanted to celebrate it on June 14th. And my great niece Grace, his birthday is on June 13th, and I could not get a venue for June 14th here in Kent. That's the time of graduation for the high schools, the various high schools. We have four high schools in Kent, and in the Kent school district, and they were all booked up at that time for graduation and baccalaureate and graduation activities. So I settled for at the Kent Meridian Performing Arts Center, the high school I graduated from, and all 6 of my brothers and sisters, my stepbrothers and stepsisters, and my half-sister, my biological sister, we all graduated from that high school, Kent Meridian. So I settled for July 10th, and we had Peace Day on July 10th, and it was a great success. I addressed Obama at the end, and we're editing the video. I heard from the videographer, James Starling of Starling Productions, a beautiful young man. He's 22 years old. He's engaged to be married He is just he's a son I never had, and he's a wonderful person. And he thanked me for being patient with him because he's been working on other projects. He's going to school at the Seattle Art Institute, and he thanked me today for being patient with him. And he said I was very kind, and I wrote back and said, "You are the one who are kind, James." His mother is Korean, and she's studying theology. I don't know how old she is, but she must be at least in her 40s. I have never met the woman, but I told James today that he was very kind. Not me, he was kind. And I said that your parents did a great job of raising you. And I said, I can tell. And I can, James. Anyway, so in Iraq, we invaded a sovereign country. And we have left them the worse for wear. That country will never be the same. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know whether it will descend into civil war. You can say they've been in civil war. They call it insurgency and counterinsurgency. Well, it was a misadventure in my estimation by George W. Bush. At least a misadventure, and maybe there was some duplicity involved. I don't know. I don't suppose we'll know for a long time before the records are made public in 50 years or whatever. And Afghanistan. What are we doing in Afghanistan? It makes my heart bleed every time that I hear of the drones being sent over Afghanistan, and that there was more collateral damage. Collateral damage. That's a euphemism for killing civilians. Collateral damage. Civilians, hell, these are women and children. These are grandfathers and grandmothers. Collateral damage, my ass. These are people. These are human beings that we're killing. They have nothing. They have no gripe with us, and we should have no gripe with them. We may have a gripe with the Taliban, but we don't have it with the women and children and the grandfathers and grandmothers that we're killing every day in Iraq or in Afghanistan. So it makes my heart bleed. It really does. And if President Obama, if you have a chance to watch this video, and it's going to be on my page on Facebook. And I will send a notice that I have recorded this video. I beg with you, I plead with you to stop the drones. Stop the drones. It's good public relations, if nothing else. We are hated in that part of the world, partly because of the drones. This has got to stop. We cannot go on this way. We are a better country than this, aren't we? Aren't we a better country than this, President Obama? You tell me. Are we a better country than this? I think we are. I think you are. And stop the drones, please. We have about a minute and a half to go in this segment. I think that General Petraeus is talking about winning the war in Afghanistan, and I ask him, what is winning the war? What constitutes winning the war? I don't think we can win the war. We routed the Taliban almost 9 years ago, and they're back. And what are they going to do when we leave after next year? They're going to be back. We're not going to win this war. If we occupied forever, maybe we could keep them at bay a little bit, like we are now. But we cannot win this war. And we've learned nothing. We've learned absolutely nothing from Alexander the Great, from Genghis Khan, from the British, from the Soviets, and now the Americans in Afghanistan. This is a death. This is the grave of empires, is Afghanistan. It's the crossroads in Asia. Marco Polo went through Afghanistan. The Silk Trade came through Afghanistan between China and Venice. We cannot win this war in Afghanistan. We will not win this war in Afghanistan. It's going to be a Pyrrhic victory, if anything. I think the sooner we get out, the better. And I'll discuss that in the next segment. We're just about out of time. I'll discuss the Taliban and what I think of them and how the doomsday scenario enters into this and so on. So we're just out of time. This is Ken Iverson in Kent, Washington, USA, signing off for this segment. Bye-bye, and we'll be back in a few seconds.